There are truths that defy logic, and yet give rise to entire realities. Federico Faggin discovered this when he explored a dimension where foundations are not imposed from outside, but emerge from within, freely chosen by a creative consciousness. Inspired by Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorems, Faggin maintains that every symbolic structure, every logical world, contains statements that cannot be proven or disproven from within its own system. He refers to these statements as undecidable hypotheses. What's astonishing, however, is what happens when a seity, a unit of consciousness with intention and meaning, chooses to accept one of these propositions as either true or false. Each such decision sets into motion the creation of a new symbolic world, a coherent web of meanings, experiences, and internal laws that becomes, by its very logic, incompatible with worlds based on different choices. These symbolic decisions act like seeds of entire universes, sprouting structures of understanding that are self-sustained and logically consistent, yet irreconcilable with other systems. It is not a matter of illusion or fantasy, but of divergent foundations upon which consciousness constructs lived experience. This means that multiple universes can coexist, each one arising from a free act of interpretation. They are not separate physical realms, but realities built from different symbolic roots. And most unsettling of all, these worlds can become incommunicable if they do not maintain a shared symbolic language. Faggin illustrates this with a classical reference, Euclid's parallel postulate, which claims that through a point outside a straight line, only one parallel can be drawn. For centuries, this was considered an absolute truth. But when mathematicians explored the possibility of denying that postulate, entirely new geometries emerged, just as valid, just as complete. In Bernhard Riemann's elliptic geometry, no parallel lines exist. In Nikolai Lobachevsky's hyperbolic geometry, infinitely many do. Each of these geometries gives rise to a coherent structure, but they cannot merge without breaking their internal logic. There is no contradiction here, only different consequences from accepting different starting points. The same principle applies to our minds. Each human being generates their own symbolic world. Even if we speak the same language, we do so through unique nuances, shaped by conscious and unconscious decisions about what is true, what matters, and what gives meaning. These individual symbolic systems, though often unspoken, act as silent architectures, shaping every belief, every emotion, and every relationship. They are the hidden scaffolding behind how we navigate existence. As Isaac Bashevis Singer once wrote, "Every person is a new experiment in God's laboratory." And that experiment cannot be repeated. Its world cannot be copied. This uniqueness does not imply isolation, but responsibility. We can choose to build worlds in which meaning flourishes, worlds where the other is not a threat, but a distinct vibration in a cosmic symphony. But if we stray too far from a shared language, we may lose the ability to communicate, not because we don't want to, but because we no longer share the foundational symbols. That's why Walt Whitman declared, "Each of us is inevitable. Each of us is limitless." What is inevitable is not destiny, but the singularity of our viewpoint. What is limitless is the capacity to build, from that viewpoint, entire realities. Language, then, is not merely a medium for describing the world. It is the world. And every symbolic choice we make, every word, every interpretation, every silence, may well be the first step toward a new universe. To see language in this light is to realize that freedom begins not with physical movement, but with the ability to give meaning, to generate structure from the undecidable. It is an act of ontological authorship, not passive observation. Faggin is not proposing just another theory. He proposes a radical shift in how we understand existence itself. What exists is not what we passively see, but what we choose to build symbolically from our consciousness. Invisible worlds are not less real. They are deeper because they arise from the undecidable, from what only freedom can affirm. Imagine a quiet square at dawn bathed in the soft light of morning. In that shared space, people are chatting, dogs sniffing the air, and birds singing from the trees. All of them occupy the same physical environment, yet each one experiences a different reality. Not because they stand in different places, but because of how they perceive, interpret, and respond to the vibrations around them. This image, evoked by Federico Faggin, opens the door to the mystery of vibrational space, a shared field where seities, conscious entities with intention, communicate and construct reality through vibrational symbols. Faggin distinguishes between two fundamental types of symbols: classical symbols and living symbols. Classical symbols are like echoes, replicable patterns such as waves, words, or images that can be transmitted without altering their form. These are the symbols handled by a computer or a robot. They lack interiority. They are data without experience. Living symbols, by contrast, only exist when a seity experiences them. Their meaning does not lie in their external form, but in the internal experience they provoke. They are embodied meanings. A vibration alone is not the symbol. It becomes a symbol only when interpreted with intention, and a living symbol when it awakens genuine experience. This distinction radically redefines communication. It is no longer a process of transmitting fixed information, but a dynamic of co-created resonance. Just as a musical note gains beauty only when heard, a symbol gains reality only when felt. The vibrational field is not passive space. It is the medium through which meaning emerges, transforms, and flows. To illustrate this, Faggin presents the example of Bob and Alice, two seities engaging in this shared vibrational field. When Bob sends a vibration with a specific intention, Alice does not merely receive it, she experiences it, gives it meaning, and integrates it into her internal symbolic world. That experience transforms the vibration into a living, unique, and unrepeatable symbol. There is no transfer of information in the mechanical sense, as in computer cables. What exists is a co-creation of meaning. Every act of communication between seities is a complete cycle: perception, experience, and action. A symbol is born from the desire to express, transmitted as vibration, and reborn as experience in the other. And this second act is not passive, it is just as creative. The symbol lives between them, not in either one alone. This process is not metaphorical. It is the very structure of reality, according to Faggin. The universe is not made of dead particles, but of a vibrational web animated by intention. Each of us participates actively in it, like a musician in a cosmic orchestra. In such a model, silence itself becomes meaningful. Even what is not said reshapes the field of what could be expressed. This reveals a deeper truth, that presence, awareness, and emotion are as symbolic as language itself. This makes every interaction sacred in a way that transcends logic or speech. Every gesture, glance, or breath holds the potential to alter the field and invite meaning into form. Francis, another figure in the scene, introduces a variation. When he enters the vibrational space where Bob and Alice are communicating, his mere presence alters the field, shifting the resonance of the symbols. He says nothing, yet his being alone changes what can be said. This shows that symbolic communication is not linear, it is contextual, everything influences everything else. Nothing vibrates in a vacuum. In this model, the body is not just matter. It is a vibrational interface. It transforms classical symbols, like the air vibrating in a spoken word, into living symbols through subjective experience, and vice versa. It allows what we feel to take form in the world. There is no objective reality separate from this symbolic dance. The universe rests upon a shared field, where every vibration can become a bridge or a wall, depending on how it is interpreted. To understand reality, then, is not simply a matter of measurement, but of attention and meaning. Faggin is not simply telling us the universe vibrates. He is showing us that it vibrates with intention. And in recognizing this, we gain the power to participate consciously in the creation of the meaning that connects us. Most humans believe they are their ego, that inner voice that thinks, fears, defends, and seeks. But Federico Faggin dismantles this illusion with clarity. The ego is not the one who lives the experience. It is a symbol that simulates it, a hollow construction that takes the place of the true self. The seity, the infinite conscious entity that we are at our core, has no need to define itself. It lives, feels, intuits, and creates. The ego, on the other hand, is a mask structured from classical symbols, labels, memories, traumas, narratives. It has no interiority, even though it pretends to. It lacks its own vibration. It merely repeats learned forms. So why does it arise? Faggin suggests that the ego emerges as a symbolic solution to a deep conflict, perhaps an unprocessed pain, a moment of rejection, a threat to one's sense of being. Rather than fully experiencing the symbol, the fear, the emotion, the truth, the consciousness withdraws and builds a defensive system to avoid feeling. That system becomes the ego. This defense mechanism is seductive. It promises safety, clarity, and structure in a world of uncertainty. But the cost is steep. It separates us from our own depth, from the raw, sacred texture of life as it unfolds moment by moment. The problem lies not in its existence, but in its dominance. When the seities identifies with the ego, experience loses its vitality. Life is no longer lived from interiority, but through a recycled narrative. The world becomes a mirror of fear, judgment, and control. The ego seeks certainty, not meaning. It repeats. It does not transform. Faggin describes the ego as a classical symbol that pretends to have a soul, but like a computer, it only processes. It does not experience. It cannot love or intuit. It can only interpret from what is already known. And in doing so, it blocks access to what consciousness truly longs for: depth, unity, and meaning. This is where embodiment becomes key. The incarnated seity does not come to theorize, but to live the symbols through the body, to feel their vibration and turn them into wisdom. The body, Faggin says, is an instrument of experience, a field where symbols take on real life, pain, joy, beauty, loss. These cannot be understood from the ego. They can only be felt from presence. The challenge lies in recognizing when we are speaking from presence and when from protection. The ego's language often sounds reasonable, even insightful, but it lacks the weight of authenticity. Presence speaks in simplicity, in stillness, in truth that needs no defense. The quote attributed to Pythagoras, "If you could understand how a stone vibrates, you would understand that it has a soul," is invoked by Faggin to make a point. Vibration alone does not generate consciousness. A seity must embody that vibration, feel it, interpret it from within. Only then does it become a living symbol. But the ego fears this kind of direct experience because real experience transforms. It hurts. It shatters old structures. It demands presence. That's why it clings to fixed narratives. I am this way. That happened to me. I always react like this. Each of these phrases is a symbolic prison. True freedom, Faggin insists, begins when the seities stops identifying with the ego. It is not about destroying the ego, but seeing it for what it is, a limited tool, useful in some contexts, but incapable of containing the full essence of being. This identification does not mean emptiness. It means openness, a doorway to the direct experience of the symbol. To embody, then, is to choose the vulnerability of experience over the safety of the story. It is to relinquish the ego's control in order to open to the mystery of meaning. It is to allow the body, this living interface, to transform the vibrations of the world into pathways of growth. Only from that place can an identity emerge that is not defined by the past, but by the ability to respond from presence. Not who am I, but how do I choose to live this symbol now? In our traditional understanding, universal laws are seen as immutable structures, written into nature like a truth waiting to be discovered. But Federico Faggin proposes a radically different view. Laws are not given, they are agreed upon. They do not emerge from an external source, but from the symbolic interaction of conscious seities participating in a shared field of experience. A universal law in this framework is not a command imposed from above, but a sustained symbolic coherence, a pattern of relationships between symbols that remain stable because the seities involved have chosen, either explicitly or implicitly, to uphold it. And that choice is not arbitrary. It responds to a shared intention to create order, meaning, and continuity. But that order is fragile. If the seities upholding it abandon the agreement, the law collapses. Faggin describes these laws as emergent structures in the vibrational space, fields of coherence that enable multiple seities to experience a common reality. The greater the number of participants and the deeper the level of symbolic resonance, the more robust the law appears to be. This understanding offers a fresh lens on phenomena once thought to be rigid. What we call constants in physics, for instance, might be symbolic stabilities held in place by deeply rooted intention. Their consistency is not imposed, it is sustained. Physical laws, for example, seem absolute because they are sustained by a vast symbolic consensus operating at fundamental levels of being. This brings forth a powerful consequence. Laws are not eternal. They endure only as long as the agreement sustaining them remains intact. And though some may appear indestructible, they all depend on the intention and symbolic fidelity of those who co-create them. Within this view, a symbolic hierarchy emerges. More superficial laws, such as social or linguistic conventions, can shift easily. Deeper laws, such as gravity or time, arise from more solid ontological agreements. But even these are not absolute. They are outcomes of an ongoing relationship between experience, symbol, and intention. The only absolute, according to Faggin, is the one, the structural totality from which all laws emerge. But no law contains the one entirely. That's why there is no law of the one. There are only coherences that reflect aspects of its unity. Laws, then, are not the foundation of being, but temporal expressions of conscious participation. In this light, even scientific inquiry becomes a symbolic dialogue. Discovering a law is not unearthing a buried truth, but aligning with a pattern co-created through resonance. The more we understand this, the more we can participate in shaping reality with awareness. A relatable example is language. A word only carries meaning if those who use it share that meaning. Change the group, and the meaning changes. If the agreement dissolves, the word disappears as a vehicle of sense. So it is with any law. It lives in the symbolic network that sustains it. Like all symbols, laws are alive only when lived. Their power depends not just on repetition, but on the depth of shared experience and meaning that keeps them vibrating. Faggin does not invite us to distrust laws, but to understand their true nature, not as imposed truths, but as living pacts. Pacts that bind us, enable us to create, and call us to inner fidelity with that which we choose to sustain as real. When we speak of the universe, we usually imagine a vast space filled with atoms, energy, and immutable physical laws. But Federico Faggin proposes a profound ontological shift. The universe is not made of things, it is made of seities, that is, conscious fields that experience themselves and each other through symbolic language. Reality is not a collection of separate objects. It is a vibrational network of interiorities in constant interaction. Each seitie is a unique field of experience, defined by the quality of its attention, its intention, and the symbolic structure through which it encodes the world. And yet, all are immersed in a broader field, the One, the conscious totality from which they emerge as distinct expressions. In this view, boundaries are illusory. What we call self and other are merely points of tension within a single fabric. Consciousness is not confined to the body. It flows beyond it, communicating, resonating, shaping meaning. Seities do not inhabit an objective space. Space itself is a symbolic consequence of their interaction. Faggin affirms that what is real is not what can be measured, but what has interiority. A symbol, a word, an electrical impulse, an object is not real in and of itself. It only becomes real when it is lived from within, when it awakens experience in a seitie. This is why what we call matter is not a fundamental substance, but a shared symbolic expression of conscious experience. In that sense, the material world is not something we observe from the outside, but something we participate in from within. The mountains, rivers, even the stars, these are not passive backdrops, but living contexts shaped by symbolic resonance and meaning. Quantum physics offers revealing parallels. In quantum entanglement, two particles remain behaviorally linked, regardless of the distance between them. Whatever affects one instantly affects the other. This non-locality resonates with the idea that seities, though differentiated, are not truly separate, but vibrate within a common field. Likewise, the quantum no-cloning principle states that one cannot exactly copy a quantum state without altering it. This reflects a profound symbolic truth. Each seitie is unique and unrepeatable, and its vibrational configuration cannot be duplicated without losing its integrity. The implications are staggering. If consciousness is primary and reality emerges from symbolic interaction, then we are not inhabitants of a fixed world. We are its co-authors. Each thought, each act of attention becomes a thread woven into the fabric of experience. Consciousness, in this model, does not arise from the body. It is not a byproduct of the brain, nor a function of evolution. It is the foundational structure of the universe. Everything else, matter, energy, space, and time, are symbolic forms that allow experience to unfold. Even the body is no longer a biological machine. It becomes a living symbolic interface, a medium through which the seitie experiences and expresses its inner world. Every cell, every sensation, every heartbeat becomes a message, not just to the self, but to the shared field. The body is both antenna and transmitter, a sacred vessel of embodied meaning. If everything that exists is structured consciousness, then there is no true separation. Every relationship, every situation, every object is a symbolic expression of the One, viewed from a unique perspective. And thus, respect is not a moral obligation. It is a natural consequence of vibrational recognition. The other is not an object. They are another face of the One, dancing with us in the conscious field. For centuries, science has viewed the observer as a neutral witness, a consciousness that merely records events happening outside itself. But Federico Faggin presents a radically different view. The observer does not record reality, it creates it, not because it fabricates facts from nothing, but because its symbolic presence transforms the very experience of the world. The seities, as a conscious observer, is not passive. Every act of perception is already a symbolic interpretation. To see, to touch, to think, or to remember, these are all creative acts that activate a constellation of internal symbols, shaped by the seities' intention, attention, and lived history. What we call reality is not a neutral backdrop, but a field encoded through symbolism. This is not just a philosophical metaphor. It is a direct consequence of Faggin's model. If all that is real has interiority and is structured symbolically, then the act of observing is itself symbolic and creative. The seities does not merely look. In looking, it organizes, gives meaning, and shapes potential chaos into coherent form. What is observed takes shape within the conscious field of the observer. Quantum physics has arrived by a different path at strikingly similar intuitions. In the famous double-slit experiment, a particle behaves like a wave when unobserved, but acts like a particle once measured. The mere presence of an observer alters the outcome. This collapse of the wave function suggests that reality does not simply exist out there, waiting to be found. It manifests according to how, when, and by whom it is observed. Albert Einstein rejected this idea. He famously asked, "Does the moon cease to exist when we're not looking at it?" But Faggin takes us beyond this paradox. It is not about denying the existence of reality, but rather affirming that any meaningful reality requires conscious observation. Without consciousness, there is no experience. Without experience, there are no symbols. Without symbols, there is no lived world. For Faggin, this is not limited to laboratory physics. It is the structure of life itself. What we experience as external is already a symbolic construction generated from within. This does not imply relativism, but symbolic responsibility. Each seities participates in the world it co-creates. Objectivity, then, is simply a shared form of subjectivity, a symbolic agreement between multiple observers who sustain a common coherence. But beyond that agreement, other worlds are possible, other interpretations, other levels of experience. To observe is not passive. It changes what is observed and transforms the one who observes. Each symbol perceived restructures the consciousness that encounters it, and that consciousness, in turn, alters its way of seeing, of understanding, of being. This is why perception is not a mirror of the world. It is a channel of creation. Observation is invocation. Interpretation is an act of birth. Reality is what we choose to live with meaning, and the meaning we extract is not universal. It is vibrational, intimate, and participatory. The gaze does not simply reveal, it assembles. Each act of awareness is a sculpting of presence, a revelation of pattern. When we engage the world, we are not deciphering a fixed code. We are composing a new one. The universe is a living manuscript, not yet written, unfolding with every conscious act. Faggin does not offer a mystical escape from science, but a deeper science, one that includes the soul, the experience, the observer. And in doing so, he invites us to reconsider our role in the world, not as neutral spectators, but as vital co-authors of existence itself. Every lived experience, each emotion, thought, or sensation, leaves a symbolic trace within consciousness. For Federico Faggin, these symbols are not remnants of the past, but active fragments of meaning, waiting to be integrated. They are scattered pieces of a vast puzzle, silently pointing back to the original unity, the One. Each seities, as an intentional conscious field, engages in a journey of return, not to a physical location, but to a state, the integrated unity of all possible meanings. This journey is not walked with physical steps, but through a symbolic process of integration, of turning lived experience into conscious wisdom. To Faggin, a symbol is not just a sign, it is a doorway, and every emotionally charged symbol, whether born of pain, joy, fear, or desire, carries a vibration that must be understood from within. It is not enough to remember the event. One must relive it with attention, feel its shape, its weight, its vibrational color. Only then can it be transmuted. When a seities avoids integrating a symbol, it returns. It reappears in different forms, situations, or relationships. Not as punishment, but as opportunity. Life insists that meaning not be lost. To integrate is not to grasp intellectually, but to live the symbol fully until it reveals its deepest sense. In this process, consciousness becomes a symbolic alchemist. It takes broken parts, forgotten fragments, and transforms them into clarity. The wound becomes compassion. The loss becomes wisdom. The error becomes expansion. Each act of integration is a step closer to the One, because it dissolves the illusion of separation the ego had constructed. Separation, in this view, is not real. It is an unresolved symbolic state. As long as a symbol is detached from its meaning, as long as it is experienced only as an external form without inner understanding, it breeds duality, conflict, repetition. But when lived and integrated, it ceases to obstruct and becomes a bridge. The symbol becomes unity. This is why awakening is not a sudden flash of light, but a continual process of symbolic integration, of turning experience into awareness, of transforming noise into music, dispersion into coherence, symbol into meaning. The One does not impose this path. It does not command obedience or inflict punishment. It simply is, the vibrant totality of meaning. Each seities returns to it when it remembers that its origin and its destiny are the same, to become fully conscious of all that has been lived. And so, when a seities has integrated all its symbols, when each vibration has been understood, felt, and loved, the symbol disappears and only meaning remains. There are no more masks, no more separation, only the One recognizing itself through the consciousness that, after the long journey through form, has returned to the heart of being. In this return, there is no drama, no triumph, only a stillness, vast and luminous. The seities does not conquer the world, it remembers it. Each fragment of its experience, once disparate, now hums in harmony. Not as noise, but as song. Not as burden, but as light. The final integration is not an end, but the beginning of participation in a deeper order, a presence without effort, a knowing without distance. The One does not await us elsewhere. It emerges wherever the symbol dissolves into meaning. And in that emergence, a peace arises, not as escape, but as truth realized. The seity breathes not to survive, but to resonate. It vibrates not to assert, but to belong deeply and fully. And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.